Good morning, everybody, and thank you to Professor Alam Ahmed for inviting me to introduce our two keynotes today. I'm really interested to hear them speak because I think this is such a pertinent topic. Working for a university, we certainly feel there is a growing conversation about how to make sure our research contribution can have a greater real-world impact. And indeed, the Open University is hosting the Development Studies Association conference later this week, which is bringing together over 500 participants from universities to think about that very topic. So I think it's very timely to be thinking about how we can widen that bridge between academia, policymakers and practitioners. First of all, you already met him, he's seen his award, Dr. Petru Dumitriu, who is a member of the Joint Inspection Unit of the UN. And previously he's held several prominent positions in the Romanian government and throughout the UN system, including on the executive board of UNESCO and UNICEF. Dr. Dumitriu, over to you.
Thank you very much, Moderator. I'm pleased to exchange with you and to present in a concise way our newest report on strengthened policy research uptake. We do have some printed copies and some summaries of the reports. They will be available in the room. But I would like to convey a number of the essentials of this report. So first of all, Joint Inspection Unit as an oversight body is trying to find first what it doesn't work very properly. The main findings in this respect are the following. First of all, it is this unavoidable heterogeneity in the way the organizations in the United Nations system, and when I'm talking about that, I'm referring to 28 organizations that accept the competence of the Joint Inspection Unit. So heterogeneity in the way they comprehend and operationalize research activities, which translates very often into duplications, fragmentation, and inefficiency in the use of resources. In the sense that some basic work is done repetitively by different organizations. They reinvent the wheel, although better coordination and communication among themselves will lead to the use of the already existing resources. There is also inconsistency in the quality assurance for policy research and uptake in some decentralized organizations at the different level, and mission limited coordination between the headquarters and the country offices among technical experts, communication experts, and operating units. And that poses risks to the dissemination and uptake, including inconsistency and the lack of coherence. I think in terms of quality assurance, you as academics, you understand how important that aspect is in any research, whether it is done in academia or is done in international organizations. Also, there is a lack of sufficient guidelines and policy on cycle of production, quality assurance, and dissemination of research in some organizations. Little transparency regarding the cost of research in terms of human and financial resources. The transparency is not like a bad policy, but so happens that because research is done either in centralized unit or is done through various programming activities or is done at the field level, so the sources and the contexts are different. It is not possible to have a synopsis, a synoptic view on how much is spent on research and how is that financial resources used. Also, we noticed the incomplete monitoring frameworks for policy research uptake for capturing use and relevance of research products. So, in other words, the process is very well described up to the level of the production, and then afterwards, it is more difficult to evaluate and to find out what's going on and to what extent that had an impact. So the third category of findings, the performance indicators on uptake were not always anchored in clearly defined benchmarks. Also, the organizations did not always use the internal existing skills, which meant we push them to use more the external resources rather than incentivizing and training their own staff. And also, research managers often follow bureaucratic imperatives, and sometimes the administrative imperative prevail over intellectual autonomy. This is a very sensitive, very sensitive problem in the sense that, you know, in the United Nations system, with a very clear operational drive, the notion of autonomy, intellectual autonomy, and academic autonomy should be seen with some let's say, reservation and some caution. So apart from doing this research, the Joint Inspection Unit has this comparative advantage, I would say, compared with the academia, in the sense that we can make recommendations across the system to various bodies and the decision maker. In that particular case, we addressed 12 formal recommendations to the General Assembly, to the Economic and Social Council, to the governing bodies of the executive heads of the United Nations system organizations, to the Secretary General of the United Nations, and to the Director General of UNESCO. Apart from that, we address what we call soft recommendations, and we address such 11 such recommendations to the executive heads across the system. The areas that are concerned by our recommendations are more or less the following. First of all, we envisage a better use of policy briefing decision-making. We found out that actually, when it's about taking decision, the research products are not really influencing the process, that they are not taken into account as such. So we would like to raise the visibility and the impact of policy briefs whenever important decisions are made. We also recommended a review of the research agenda of the regional commission. The regional commissions of the United Nations are considered to be a think tank, because they make the connections between the headquarters, the global vision, and the field national level vision and the practical needs. So we want to really have this research agenda review, in a sense that the Regional Economic Commission of the United Nations play indeed their role of think tanks. Another area is about a system-wide policy on open data access, supporting software and research sharing among the United Nations system organizations. So we call ourselves a system, but very often we don't communicate enough, we don't use enough what is produced in other organizations. Very important, in particular in the context of the WAST meeting and WAST network, is that we recommended action to enhance the level of involvement of researchers from the South, including at the national level. So at the point in time where the technology makes us communicate substantially, it is unreasonable to only wait from the researchers from the north to find solution to the problems that we are having in the south. So that is a call for all the United Nations organizations to find and to stimulate the involvement of the researcher from the south in finding solutions to the sustainable development agenda issues. Other areas are about, let's say, more or less internal things related to the quality of research. So to have a minimum set of standards on research production and uptake that would be valid across the system, and that would make the products of various organizations compatible and in a cross-fertilization mode. Also, the periodic assessment of specific research needs and of the potential supplies of research products is one of the recommendations. What we meant here is that the needs should be, most of the research done in the United Nations should be demand-driven, should serve some purpose, should serve some goals included in the agenda. And the search for potential suppliers of research products should be done in a more open and transparent way. In addition, we recommended an interagency collaboration, including through the establishment of a global data knowledge platform and the facilitation on academic exchange on migration. Why did we mention that? Because, as you know, last year in December, a new global compact on migration was adopted, and one of the main recommendations is really to make the data on migration accessible for the public, for the government, so as the policies on migration are not dictated by fake news, wrong data, and by inducing sentiments of fears and panic to the uninformed population. On the contrary, it should be based, the decision on migration should be based on evidence and on data that is solid and reliable. All things considered, the report recommends a movement towards a more efficient uptake based on a few guiding principles and modus operandi for communication and collaboration that would lead all the United Nations organizations to act as a system-wide research network. Now, as Professor Alam said, we paid the special attention to the view, to the perspective of the academia. So we had, for the first time, a separate chapter in a GIU official report where the information received via a survey addressed to the academia, to which almost 500 academics responded, academics and researchers responded. We draw the conclusion, not only we summarized their visions, but also we quoted as such some of the most meaningful proposal. And we recommended two basic actions that are related directly to the academia. First of all, a long-term partnership with academic communities at the global, regional, and national levels, and basic guidelines for such partnerships. And the second, the creation of the United Nations Academic Joint Publication Board with the task to identify research needs at system-wide level and the most efficient ways to produce, disseminate, and uptake policy research in a collaborative and participatory manner, and having as a long-term objective to strengthen the internal capacity for research and making systematic use of research produced by academia. This is something that we placed a particular emphasis, because very often we use consultants, and these consultants, what do? They are paid for their service, but they compile research that is produced by people like you, that is publicly and openly available. So we'd like to encourage the United Nations system organizations to engage with the academia in a more systematic and solid way, rather than using in a fragmentary and inefficient way various inputs from consultants. We, as expected impact, we hope to bring, to raise the awareness about the still underused potential of policy research and continue action to enhance research uptake in the use of such research in policy making, improve transparency in the use of resources, and the minimum set of policies and rules in the United Nations organizations, which will guarantee that research agenda setting, the choice of research products and producers, and quality assurance processes are conducted systematically and with a permanent concern for efficient uptake. We also, here again, we are somehow addressing to the impact that is expected to occur from the interaction between the United Nations system and academia, and that is to maximize the use of quality research produced by external academic and research communities, to have more systematic forms of exchange and partnership with university research institutions and think tanks, and to recalibrate the research processes to better fit the needs of the 2030 agenda by mainstreaming interdisciplinary and collaborative research. And I think this inspiration for interdisciplinary approaches came also from the academic world in the survey we undertook in 2018. Our report did not exhaust the possible issues. We still have questions for future reviews that we expect that debates like yours and other debates will bring some answers. What is the optimum balance between demand-driven research dictated by immediate operational needs and anticipative research, which should inform the strategies and the visions of the United Nations organizations? How autonomous should policy research be in terms of both organizational structure and research agenda setting, and how should the accountability lines in all institutional configurations be drawn? How can the needs of research for the 2030 agenda be defined, clustered, and met around the themes and the organizational mandates with the collaboration of all competent organizations? What institutional mixes, partnership forms, or co-creation formulas can overcome the frustration of both academics and policymakers with the uptake of academic research? How to improve the abilities of researchers and research managers to translate academic research into the policy-making language. We know very well that we do have that problem. The different approach of the academic research would be very solid, very well argued, very systematic, dealing with method in details and producing the evidence for each idea and the short time available for policymakers. So we need to find better ways to translate this academic research. And I estimate that in the future that will be a kind of discipline in itself. How can the capacity of the executive heads and governing bodies to absorb research be stimulated as to have real political traction and influence the normative and the operational context? How can reporting lines be improved and decision makers be motivated to take into account trends and the changes needed as identified by policy research? So as you can see, this is a dialogue, it's a work in progress. We need both the availability of the readiness of the policymakers in the United Nations system to absorb more from the academic, and we need also the academic to make their products more user-friendly, so to say, to policymakers as to indeed produce impact. Thank you for your attention. A number of flyers are available where you might find in a more concise way the recommendations and the findings of the GIU review. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. We have time for a few questions from the floor. So please raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question, and then if you could give your name and organization, please. Yeah, over here.
Okay, assalamu alaikum, good morning. My name is Sadiq Musa. I'm from Multimedia University, Malaysia. It is a very good proposal, actually, and we are looking forward to work with the UN organization, especially in research and publication. But the challenging is UN is able to fund the research that we are going to develop for the 2020 goals. We need a research grant in order to achieve the 2030 17 goals in terms of research and publication.
As I try to allude, there are resources spent by the organizations for having available in decision making research products that are relevant for particular areas. You well know that the United Nations has regular budgets that are frozen. So for a long time, despite the fact that we have more and more items on our table, we don't have more resources. But that is not a negative answer to what you asked. So first of all, our report suggests the issue that rather than paying consultants to produce research of a high academic quality, we should engage into a partnership with academia. And we know very well that such partnership will enable academia to find resources somewhere else. And then this is one way to respond to your question. The second way is the second option is that United Nations plays indeed the facilitation role, the catalyst role in finding resources for research. So while there is no such a chapter in the budget of the United Nations, research grants, there are resources existing in the system as such that there are options also to mobilize resources for outside the system. But to do so, there should be a better interaction between the academia and the United Nations organizations.
Thank you very much. It's Georgi Gurban from the Executive Office of the Secretary General at IMO. Very interesting report and very interesting presentation. I would have two questions and a comment, please. The first question is that we know that for consultants there are well-established rules in the United Nations system how to make sure fair competition. How would you see this to the academia? Because that's one practical way forward that is puzzling me. The recommendation, of course, is very much welcomed, but what type of rules could be put in place to make sure that there's fair treatment of various university institutions, research institutions when the partnerships are established? So that's question one. Question two is about the UN Global Data Knowledge Platform you mentioned. I was just at the AI for Good Summit organized by IUT 2 weeks ago in Geneva, and the topic came up there as well, noting that there's not enough exchange in between the various UN bodies when it comes to data available. Just if I take UNEP and IMO as example, we both work on pollution, but the methodology that we use collecting the data and asking the member states to collect the data may be a bit different, which causes, again, a problem how to connect our existing platforms. And here, too, research and technology may help with finding the right algorithm to translate in between our existing data. But I would just like you to elaborate a bit more at this point. And finally, a comment. I understand that at the European Union level, there's the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, which was established by the EU with a similar thinking to bring closer the gap between the European institutions and governments and the industry and the university researchers. So I wonder if you looked at the example of the EIT, or it's something that could be also considered to look at in the future when these issues are addressed, because I understand that they have some best practices, but also lessons learned and challenges that could be useful for the UN. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good points. On your first question on the existing rules, of course, if we want to transform the world with the United Nations, we have to transform ourselves. So we have to review our own rules. So if the rules, you are very right that there are very detailed procedures about the selection of consultants. But this selection, let's be honest, they are based on a CV. They are based on the reputation of the respective consultants, whether they are independent consultants or institutional consultants, and that is there is a procedure for selection, etc. But still, that remains a little bit of a subjective exercise, in the sense that there is a certain comfort area where the people in the system, in our organization, situate themselves. So they would not go worldwide to find the best consultant existing in the world. They will have their roster. They will have a sort of limited capacity of determining what is the best, who are the best provider for the needs. So it is a very good system. Then why shouldn't we why can't we have similar rules for the universities? The universities have a different status, a different reputation. They are well known. Their activities are public. They are better known than the work of individual consultants. So we can have a simple, and actually, I don't say that there are not partnerships, such partnership now working. There are such partnerships, but they are determined in the same way. They see the offer of various universities, they see the potential, they see the ranking of the university, and then they have their short list, and they make their selection for the partnership. And then partnership is in itself, a certificate of reliability and seriousness. So I think that although such the rules for engaging the universities are not as elaborated as the rule in engaging the individual consultant, this is not a very difficult exercise. About the UN global data, this is a very sensitive issue in the sense that indeed there are many places where one can find what is called global data. And you rightly pointed out that this data is normally collected in different ways. But in our recommendations, we are aware of that problem. In our recommendations, I specify that it's related to the data on migration. Because in this report, I didn't mention it for the sake of the time, we have a special chapter on migration, and we find out that at least 14 organizations out of the 28 we reviewed, they did research on migration from various angles. And they did research on migration even without involving the main agency dealing with specific issues. I give you an example, human rights and migration, or the economic impact of migration. That was done sometimes individual, sometimes in relation to one organization, sometimes of a group of the 2 or 3 or 4 organizations, which means that by all means there were different ways to do the same stuff, and sometimes the quality of the research product is incongruent, and there are incompatibilities. But in terms of migration, there is a specific imperative need now to do research collectively. That is, all the countries that are part of a working group on migration as determined by the Global Compact. So it is one issue relevant for the SDGs, but this can be extrapolated to the level of other sustainable development goals. It's not easy indeed. That is a reality, but we should try. If we establish a methodology to collect data that are relevant and necessary for the accomplishment of the 2030 agenda, then there might be some ways to make them compatible and efficient. And indeed, it is the occasion is now or never, because the agenda is the one that pushes us, that practically obliges governments, academia, private sector to work together. So we should, it is now the time that we could really come to a point or global data is collected for the SDG in a systematic way. Otherwise, the information is not missing, but we don't have the compass. We don't have the more information available on the net, the more difficult it will be for us to find the relevant one. We consult, although we basically, our work is based on the dialogue and the interviews and questionnaire addressed to the 28 participating organizations, but we always interact with the other organizations for good practices, and it is the case for the European Union, and it is also the case for this particular report. And you can imagine, just think about it. The European Union with 28 organizations, hopefully they will stay 28 for the years to come. There are still problems in assuring a minimum level of homogeneity in data collection. Imagine that, extrapolate that to the level of the United Nations system with different levels of development, different geographical areas, and 193 countries. So it's a challenging task, but we should start. For instance, Joint Inspection Unit would like to penetrate into this territory of innovation. So we would like to see whether we can have some common practices and standards and taxonomy on blockchain for next year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we have time maybe for one or two quick questions, if that's okay. This gentleman here.
Good morning. Can I congratulate you on your new prize? My name's Alan Dean. I run a company called Burning to Learn. Would it make sense with your family of 28 for them to actually look at the global goals and identify which ones their latest project is going to address? That may well go out to the universities, where do they specialise, and indeed the consultants, so that we start thinking that we don't tackle all of the goals, but we start finding the expertise in different areas.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for your congratulations, and thank you for your question. We have to admit our limits as an institution. So the Joint Inspection Unit is dealing with 28 organizations, and it's seeing basically the institutional aspects, the mechanism, the cooperation mechanism, the rules and existing procedure. We cannot and we will never be able to enter into the substance, into the topics. We are looking at the framework, but it's not to say that we don't have an opinion on that. What we can say is that there should be a mechanism in which the research agenda setting is done in cooperation with the private sector or with the academic. And that is the sense of one of our recommendations, in the sense that once you have at least a small step like having a joint United Nations Academia Publication Board. That would be already an exercise of selecting what kind of, what the academia may ask the organization, what is the area where you need more research? What is the particular area? Of course, research is needed in all areas, but maybe there are priority areas. And then the organization may respond, and then from the interaction, the best formula of putting together needs and resources will be found out. But as GIU, we only can give the direction. We cannot say, look, energy is more important now, or climate change is more important now, or children protection is more important.
Okay, I can see lots of hands going up, but we're running out of time. So I think we'll probably only be able to have time for one more question. So whose hand is the highest? This gentleman here.
It's the highest hand in response to a great presentation, Dr. Petru. You carried out extensive consultations leading up this report. It has a lot of credibility. In fact, its recommendations are spot on. I'm just wearing a slightly different hat in terms of University of East London, which is the chair of the Global Stakeholders Forum for UN Habitat, but also a coordinator for universities in terms of sustainable urbanizations, and also with the General Assembly of Partners. I'm just thinking how we can disseminate this report. Now, I know these are recommendations making to the UN system. We'd like also the academic partners to be informed, to contribute it, because many of the things that you talked about are also about, the academic institutions and researchers being proactive, being innovative, showing the kind of readiness to step up to the challenge. So I'm actually looking at whether your job is finished, or how you're going to continue, and how you can rally the UN to work more closely with the academic institutions.
Thank you very much. Well, we'd like that the life of a report goes well beyond the moment of its publication. So what I would say that, the reason of my presence and, the reason of this more and more systematic relationship that we had with WASP was precisely to reach a broader audience. First of all, everyone knows that these reports are publicly available. So this is something that is valid for at all instances. So even more, what I can tell you is that you can use those reports in order to determine the reactions from the particular organization. So for instance, if you have an idea in mind of a common research undertaking with UN Habitat, you can rightly go with a GIU report in your hand saying that this is a recommendation that was done by the GIU. GIU has the competency to make some recommendations, and you, among others, you accept it. It might be, maybe it is a piece of information useful for you. The rate of acceptance of our reports is somewhere between 60 and 70%. And when they are not, the recommendations are not implemented, it's not necessarily because they were bad recommendations, but because of the difference in size and the resources of the particular organization. So we calculate that at the level of the 28 organizations. So we do our best to disseminate. We came here just to present our report, but the reports are public, and whoever is interested can use really these reports. These reports are not just for the benefit of the governing bodies. Very often, maybe it's too early to determine for this particular report, but for instance, the knowledge management report, it became a tool in the hands of what I call the working class, the middle class among international public servants, in the sense that some people with good ideas, with good energy, with openness to change, to improve the world, they take these reports and they promote their professional agenda by using that report. So that would be a sort of partial answer to your question.
Okay. Apologies to those who would like to ask a question. Unfortunately, we don't have time for, but I'm sure afterwards the session there'll be time for some dialogue, because I think what you've done, Dr. Dumitriu, is create a very powerful tool for discussion and hopefully for change. I think change in terms of how we collaborate together to make a much more impactful research agenda behind the SDGs. So thank you once again for your excellent presentation.
So please remember, if we all help and do a little bit, it will make a big difference.